Good evening, families. Welcome. Welcome to our virtual Parent Academy on Florida Financial Aid Application and Bright Futures. This is the English version. This session is being recorded. The session will run approximately from 7 to 8 tonight. I would like to introduce to you Pedro Hernandez. He is the Director of Outreach Services at the Florida Department of Education, Office of Student Financial Aid, Student Financial Assistance. Welcome, Pedro.
Thank you, Lenoma, and good evening to everyone. In tonight's sessions, I, Pedro Rojas Hernandez, Director of Outreach Services here, will make you guys all financial aid semi-experts. Does that sound like a plan? And the reason is you're only going to be semi-experts is because that is the very first lesson. Financial aid changes every single year. However, with the information that you're going to receive today, you're going to be able to understand and comprehend any financial aid changes, differences, and you'll be able to proceed from that point forward. So with that in mind, welcome everyone. We're gonna take this session. It's gonna take about 30 to 40 minutes. It's gonna be a very comprehensive session. It's gonna go through a lot of things rather quickly, but very, very easy to understand because financial aid is gonna break down to just a couple of things for everybody. Very, very similar things. However, because everybody's different, everybody's gonna experience a different thing. We will then open it up after the session for questions and answers. And if you stay to the very end, you're going to receive my direct contact information. So those of you who students and parents that have a very specific question that you don't want to address or ask in a open setting, will be more than happy to answer those in a private setting as well. So with that in mind, let us begin. So first and foremost, I'm going to start sharing my video, and then Noma, just make sure that it is showing up on the screen. Good job. So this is the financial overview presentation. It's going to explain the entire financial aid process when it comes to understanding the entire financial aid process, whether you're attending a public school, a private school, a technical center, whether it's in state or whether what's that a state. I will make sure that you understand and address any concerns. Now, this is specifically geared for the 24-25 high school graduate enrolling in the 25-26 year. But I'm also going to cover what happens if you go to summer school. What happens if you take a gap year? What happens if every now and then it, you know, certain circumstances? I'll go ahead and address those as well. So let us begin. So very first and foremost, when it comes to financial aid personnel, financial aid representatives are going to speak in their own language. They're going to talk about such terms as cost of attendance, CSS, FAFSA, SAI, Florida Financial Aid Application, or FFA. The bottom line is the very one thing that I want you to take from this is that if you, anytime you have a question, concern that you do not understand a term, a concept, have stop them and have them explain, because we live in our own little world and use our own language. But if you do not understand a term or concept, always stop that person, because the only wrong question that you can have is the one that you do not ask. That is why we are here tonight, to make sure that you understand these. So with that in mind, first and foremost, what are we going to cover today? Yes, cost of attendance, COA. How is that important? CSS profile. Who does that apply to? What is the FAFSA? That is the free application for federal student aid. The FSA ID is the mechanism which both a parent and a student, if they're dependent, this is how they sign that FAFSA electronically. The FSS, or FAFSA submission summary, is the result of that filling out and completing that FAFSA application. The SAI is the student aid index that is derived from filling out the FAFSA, and it is used to determine need-based financial aid for federal, state, and institutions themselves. So, as you can see, we went through a couple of terms already, and you already are feeling a little bit more comfortable. But that's perfectly fine. We'll continue to go over these so you gain a better understanding. And then we're also going to cover things such as the Florida Financial Aid Application and how the U.S. Department of Education and the Florida Department of Education all interact. So let us begin. Now, our agenda tonight is going to be answering 4 simple questions. First and foremost, what is financial aid? Secondly, where do you find financial aid? How and when do you apply? And who can help you with the process? By answering those 4 questions, it's going to actually explain the entire financial aid process for you. So let us begin with the very first question. What is financial aid? So, first and foremost, financial aid, there are four major sources of financial aid. Financial aid, first and foremost, there's the federal source or the U.S. Department of Education. Secondly, the state of Florida. We reside in a state that our office here administers over 1 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars every single year. Third source of all financial aid is institutional financial aid. That is the colleges, universities, or technical centers, whether that's private, public, or charter, in state, out of state. That is those institutional funds. And finally, private scholarships. Now, we will be answering questions at the very end. So I completely understand that you have a question, but if you save it to the very end, we'll address those then. Now, financial aid could also be categorized as gift aid. What's gifts? Things that are free, money that doesn't have to be repaid back. It could also be identified as self help aid. That is money such as a college work study program, a state work study program, or student loans, money that helps you help yourself get an education. Need based financial aid is that money that's determined based on the FAFSA, that SAI concept. We're going to address that. And then merit based. For example, the Florida Bright Future Scholarship is a merit based scholarship. If you earned it, you will receive those funds. Now, all the financial aid can cover both what's called direct and indirect costs. And that's how it brings us to our next slide. So, when it comes to the very first, let's quickly redefine a little bit more about federal financial aid, the first and big source. Yes, there's such things such as a Pell Grant, which is gift aid, and is also need based. So that is money that if you fully qualify, it's a little over $7,000 now to go to a college institution of your choice. The SEOG grant is also a federal grant that's based on gift and based on need. The difference between these two is very important, and I'm going to share it with you now. But federal Pell Grant, that is an entitlement. So if you qualify for those funds never run out. The FSEOG grant is money that the U.S. Department of Education allocates to every college, university, and technical center, and then they are then able to award those funds to as many students as possible. But not every qualifying student is going to receive it. So that's why it's important that we apply for financial aid as early as possible. You'll start getting these concepts over and over again. Work study programs from the federal government, and then federal loans. You're going to have federal student loans, which can come in subsidized. That means that the student is responsible for paying the student loan back after they graduate from high school, from either the college, university, or technical center, and parent loans. These are all considered financial aid. So next thing, let's look at the state scholarships. We have a thing called the Benequisto Scholarship and the Bright Future Scholarship. As you can see, both are merit-based scholarships. The Benequisto Scholarship can cover up to 100% of an education. That's the whole cost of attendance. Very important, very big scholarship. The Bright Future Scholarship can cover up to 100% or 75% of tuition and fees, and we have four levels of it. Two for the academic ones, which are the Florida Academic and Florida Medallion, and the Gold Seal and Gold Seal Cape for those students wanting to study more the vocational trades. So there is scholarships for everybody. That is also going to see something that we're going to cover today, that financial aid is available to anybody and everybody, because there not should be not a single family that raises their hand and says, you know what, we don't qualify for financial aid. Because now that you know, financial aid is any and all money from all four major sources. So we here in the state of Florida, we also have our work experience, effective access to education, but we also list our website here because we have over 20 scholarships and grants, and that would take a long time. But I'm still going to cover those in a second. Now, institutional funds. Institutional funds is money from, once again, from the college, universities, or technical centers. This is, once again, they could award it based on academic, which is gift aid and merit based or need based, or they could base it on a major or study, but they're going to list it on so many other things. That's why when you're evaluated for and submit a FAFSA application and a Florida financial aid application, you're evaluated for all federal funds, all state funds, and all institutional funds, with a couple exceptions, and I'll go over those in a second. Then private scholarships. Private scholarships are for anybody. You're going to see, and we're going to cover this a little bit later, but you're going to understand that private scholarships are available from multiple sources, but it is a source of financial aid. Now, let us first begin When it comes to the college cost and you start looking at colleges and universities, they're going to quote you what's called the cost of attendance. That cost of attendance is the average cost of direct fees, which are your tuition and fees plus indirect fees, the average cost of housing, meal plan, transportation costs. When you add those two up, that's how you come to the cost of attendance. But that cost of attendance is also going to be different between one institution to the next. It's also going to vary whether you're in state or out of state. And it's also going to vary whether you're on campus or off campus. This is all going to determine your specific cost of attendance at an institution. And once again, that cost of attendance made up of the direct cost plus the indirect cost. But be very aware that students' parents, if you go to any school's website and research for what's called the net price calculator, this is a tool that's going to tell you as a student, as a parent, what's it likely to cost you to go to that institution. So this is a very important tool, the net price calculator. Now, when we looked at direct cost and indirect cost, one of the biggest variants is going to be that direct cost. And let me explain why. In the state of Florida, if you enroll at a two-year public college, what's used to be called a community college, what are now state colleges, you guys are in Orlando. You have Valencia College, you have Seminole College, State College in your vicinity, and you have Lake Sumter State College. All of these state colleges in the area, on average, cost about $3,000 for tuition and fees. That is just your direct cost. If you were to go, for example, in the state of Florida to any of the 12 public state universities, for example, UCF, which you have locally, USF, UF, FSU, any of the 12 state universities, on average, tuition and fees are just a little over $6,000. And if you go to an out-of-state institution, for example, University of Alabama, University of Georgia, guess what? That tuition and fee cost goes up to $28,000. And if you were to enroll to a private, non-for-profit institution here in the state of Florida, on average, just a little under $40,000 tuition and fees. Now, we ask you, go and pursue the school of your dreams, but know the exact cost and what it's going to take you to go there, not 1 year, not 2 years, but a couple other years. So, yes, quarter schools are going to also differ, but the schools could also quote you in quarter schools or in actual annual costs. Now, vitally important, if that slide scared you a little bit, don't be scared. Student, pursue your academic dreams, but be realistic. And that's why in the state of Florida, we have these costs, but we also have ways of addressing them. Now, what applications do you file? Remember, that's the second questions. What applications do I file? So, example, if there is the free application for federal student aid, that free application for federal student aid is a federal application that is done by, administered by the U.S. Department of Education. It is not mandatory, but if you would like to be evaluated for federal, state, and institutional funds, yes, please complete that application because that initiates that evaluation for you. Now, as high school seniors, we always recommend if you fill out the FAFSA and the Florida Financial Aid application, yes, those are two different applications. The Florida Financial Aid application, that is a requirement for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship and for other scholarships. But like to tell our students, if you fill out both the FAFSA and the Florida Financial Aid application your senior year, you will be evaluated for a great majority of all the state scholarships and grants, all the federal scholarships and grants, and all the institutional scholarships and grants. So that's why it's vitally important. Now, the second thing is if your school requires you to fill out a CSS profile, that's only if you're going to an Ivy League school, or the one school in the state of Florida that requires that is the University of Miami. If you're not going there, don't worry. You do not have to fill out this application. But there's going to be institutional applications. Please note that I stated if you fill out a FAFSA and a Florida financial aid application, you're going to get evaluated for a great majority of the scholarships and grants. You are. But there's a couple. For example, we here in the state of Florida have two grants. The First Responders Grant, if you want to be a firefighter or law enforcement officer, or an open door grant, a vocational grant that's so brand new that it's right now not a part of the automatic process of evaluation. Therefore, if you ask your school, do you have any additional funds? They're going to say yes. Fill out this form and you're going to be evaluated for that open door or any other state scholarship and grant, or any institutional funds that the school has. So just make sure that you are aware that some institutions are going to require another institutional application. And then private scholarships, once again, that's going to be completely up to you. And every scholarship donor is going to probably require a scholarship application to be completed. So now, the FAFSA, let's review a couple more things. The FAFSA itself has to be filled out annually. And your senior year, you fill out your FAFSA and your Florida financial aid application. And every year after that, yes, you do have to fill out that FAFSA annually to make sure that you are being evaluated for federal financial aid, state financial aid, and institutional financial aid. Now, when you fill as a high school student, you fill that out. Yes, you are required to fill that FAFSA application for anytime you're in college and wish to be evaluated. Now, this is what the website looks like. You go to studentaid.gov, and this is where you complete your FAFSA. Now, the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid, it can and it is available for the 2 academic years. So right now, you guys may be in high school. You're graduating in 2025, but the college students are in the 24-25 academic year, just like you are. But if you are going to graduate in May or June of this year and immediately enroll in summer, that's part of the 24-25 academic year. So, yes, you would complete a 24-25 FAFSA application, but also the 25-26 for the fall of 2025, spring 2026, summer 2026, that application is also available. So just make sure that you complete both if you are thinking about going to summer and for next year. Now, make sure that you gather important information. Make sure that you know your school's priority dates because, as I indicated earlier, a lot of that financial aid is going to be, once again, we're going to answer questions at the very end. So I know you guys are texting me and having notes, but we are going to answer those questions at the very end. Now, but when it comes to deadlines, there's deadlines and there's priority deadlines. Your schools are all going to have what's called a financial aid priority date. And that means that on that date, they're going to start processing all of the FAFSAs that they have on file. Now, as I indicated earlier, there's going to be some scholarships and grants that are going to be awarded a majority of the time on a first come, first serve basis. And that's going to be based on when did you fill out that FAFSA application. Now, please note, did I say when were you accepted to that institution? No. It's a lot of times it's going to be based on when did you fill out that FAFSA application. So make sure that you fill it out as soon as possible. When it comes to your FAFSA application, you can set it up to multiple schools. You can set it up to your first choice school, second choice school, multiple schools that you have in mind. So that way, when you get accepted on the admission side, or you submit your application and you get accepted, the colleges, universities, or technical centers, they're going to match up your admissions paperwork to hopefully your already existing financial aid paperwork. And that's going to trigger or generate what's called an offer of financial aid. They will then be able to tell you if you come to our school, you're going to be offered this much federal financial aid, state financial aid, and institutional financial aid. So when it comes to the FAFSA, just make sure that you start submitting your application. Once you submit your FAFSA, you're going to get back what's called a FAFSA submission summary. That means that this provides basic information and it is confirmation that you filled out your FAFSA correctly. It's also going to have the list of all the schools that you have indicated. So make sure, because now you are treated as a young adult, and as a young adult, are being, it is ultimately your responsibility to ask questions, to inquire, to confirm that you have completed this information. So when you fill out your FAFSA, you're going to get back in your email the FAFSA submission summary. Check it, make sure that everything was filled out correctly. Now, that FAFSA submission summary is also going to contain what's called a student aid index. That student aid index is exactly what it is. It's an index that's going to be used by the colleges, universities, or technical centers to award you need based financial aid when it comes to the Pell Grant, when it comes to the FSEOG grant, when it comes to the Florida Student Assistance Grant, when it comes to scholarships and grants from the college or university themselves that are based on financial need. So that's why it's important to submit this information and make sure that everything has been submitted correctly. Now, When it comes to the FAFSA, this process is not a perfect process because the FAFSA is based on prior tax year information. For example, the 25-26 FAFSA year is based on 2023 taxes. If your family, you as a student, has experienced any financial crisis, it is not reflected on that FAFSA application, and that's perfectly okay. We are still complete the FAFSA application as indicated, and then through the process of, called either special circumstances or professional judgment, this is your right, your responsibility to self-identify at the financial aid office of your institution, not at the U.S. Department of Education, but at the financial aid office at your institution, and provide documentation of what is going on. 99.9% of the time, financial aid offices will take a look at that information, document it, and adjust your financial aid package to truly reflect what's going on. So just make sure that you are aware that if that is the case for you and your family, you address that by talking to the financial aid office once your FAFSA application has been completed. Now, another thing vitally important is if you are chosen for what's called verification, and well, when you are chosen for verification, what does that mean? That either the U.S. Department of Education or the school themselves, they have chosen you, and it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just a quality control mechanism that the U.S. Department of Education and the schools utilize to make sure everything is marching correctly. However, what that means for you as a student, as a family, is the fact that now you have to provide that school all the documents that they are requesting. And until you do so, your financial aid file has stopped. So make sure that if you are chosen for verification, you immediately provide that financial aid office and follow up with them to make sure that they received all the required documentation so that they could continue processing your file and put you in the awarding process. Now, that is the verification process. So, what is essential here is great communication with the financial aid office. Once again, ask in regards to the processes, in regards to when your disbursement dates are. But more importantly, I want to cover something very important with everyone here. How do offices determine your financial aid award package? Very important. They take the cost of attendance and they subtract the SAI that's determined by filling out the FAFSA application. And then they're going to add all the federal, state, and institutional scholarships and grants. And then they're going to subtract any 529 or Florida prepay or any college plans or vice versa. Then they're going to add any federal loans student subsidized. That means that the student is not responsible for paying that loan, principal nor interest until after you graduate from college, university, or technical center. And then they're going to award the student an unsubsidized loan. That's the student's not responsible for the principal on that loan, but they are responsible for the interest. And then they're going to award the student a parent loan and then a private loan. Their financial aid goal is to get you as close to zero as they possibly can. So your financial aid packages are going to include student loans. But we always ask you, don't automatically take those loans. Those loans are a maximum amount. If at any time during any academic year you do not take that loan or you ask for less than that amount and you come to need that loan later on in the academic year, you could always go back to the financial aid office and yes, they can reinstate that loan on your behalf. So just make sure that you don't automatically take that loan. Now, another question that I'm always asked is, can I get too much information? Too much information or too many scholarships and grants? No, because as you see, the formula that they use is anytime they put you this formula together for you, if you get scholarships and grants, it goes to the very top. That means that the last thing they take out is private loans, then parent loans, and then student loans. So the more private scholarship money, federal scholarship, state scholarships, institutional scholarship, they go to the very top, and the last thing that gets dropped off are the student loans first. So that's very important to note. So once you complete that, then as a high school senior, we ask you to complete what's called the Florida Financial Aid application. That Florida Financial Aid application is once again part of or is a requirement for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship and 5 other scholarships. But even though I was asked, but what if I fill out my application sometime in October or right now? but I haven't fulfilled my classes requirement, my GPA requirement, my service hours, or I still haven't taken my test. That's perfectly fine. The application is just a requirement. That means when you fill it out, that requirement is complete. You still have until high school graduation to get your classes done, your GPA, your community service hours, or your work hours, or a combination of both, documented to your high school counselor. You have until August 31st of your high school graduation year to take qualifying SAT, ACT, or CLT exams so you can qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. And August 31st of 2025 is the deadline for your application. But if you fill it out now, you've met that requirement. Once again, we're giving you our website because this is the website, once again, where you're going to apply as a high school student. The very center, that is a first time applicant. You're going to click on it, create an account, and submit your application. Now, once you submit your application and you create an account, that means you could always come back to the same website. And on the upper right hand side, you're going to see a login. That is a login for you to come log in and track the status of your application for all of your state scholarship and grants throughout your entire career. So you have that information readily in front of you. Our website is also great because it has on the right hand side the list of all of our state scholarships and grants. So you want to know more about Benequisto? Guess what? It's the very first thing there. Click on it, read everything about it. Second one down, the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. You want to learn about firefighters? Go to their website, click on firefighter, first responders, you'll get that information. Once again, all that information is on our website. Now, as I indicated earlier, the Florida Bright Futures Florida Financial Aid application is required and it is mandated. It's also mandated for the scholarship for children and spouses of deceased or disabled veterans, the Jose Marti Scholarship, the Rosewood Family Scholarship, the Florida Farm Worker Scholarship, and the Randolph Bracy Ocoee Scholarship. It is a requirement to fill out that Florida financial aid application. So make sure that if you are a high school senior, fill this out. You're going to automatically be evaluated for these specific scholarships, but all the other state scholarships and grants. Now, these are all the other state scholarships and grants that you're going to be evaluated for if you once again fill out a FAFSA and a Florida financial aid application. You're going to be evaluated for all the need-based scholarships, which is the FSAG, the Florida Student Assistance Grant, the Work Experience Program, the Effective Access to Student Education Grant Program, the merit-based scholarships, the Florida Bright Futures, and the Benequisto Scholarship. Now, let me just review, take a little time to cover the Florida Bright Future Scholarship specifically. The Florida Bright Future Scholarship, once again, has a tab on our website that outlines everything that you need to how you could qualify. Now, there are traditionally five requirements to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. The first one is the classes that you need to take. You need to take 4 math credits, 4 English credits, 3 social science, 3 biological science, and 2 consecutive world languages. Those are 16 core classes. Those are the same core classes that state universities utilize to admit you as a student on the admission side. Now, that's the first requirement. You need to take those classes. Secondly, you need to have a certain GPA in those classes and only in those classes. For the Florida Academic, it is a 3.5 weighted GPA or higher. For the Florida Medallion, it's a 3.0. The third requirement is service hours, and you could do community service hours, approved work hours, or a combination of both. For the Florida Academic, you need 100 hours of service hours or approved work hours or a combination of 100 hours or more. For the Florida Medallion, you need 75 service hours, 100 work hours, or a combination of 100 work hours or more between the two. In regards to the Gold Seal and Gold Seal vocational scholarships, you have 30 hours to make sure that you complete them or 100 work hours. Now, when it comes to the Benequisto Scholarship, once again, our tab has a lot of information on it, but technically is if you are a Florida National Merit Scholarship dollar recipient and your school in the state of Florida submits an application and you qualify for the Benequisto Scholarship because you qualify at the universities, they will send us a list and we will pay 100% of your cost of attendance. And that is made up of the Benequisto Scholarship is equal to the cost of attendance minus the sum of the National Merit Scholarship plus your Bright Future Scholarship. But it covers all the cost of an education. Now, in addition to that, these are all the other scholarships and grants. Remember, I said there was an exception. The last two, the first responders and the open door grant program, those are so brand new that once again, they're not part of our automatic evaluation. So once again, when you fill out a FAFSA application, a Florida financial aid application, and you ask your school if you're a first responder or if you qualify under the open door grant program, they will get you an application, you fill it out, and you're going to be evaluated for those scholarships and grants. Those are equivalent to approximately a little over $35 million within those two scholarships statewide. So just make sure that you qualify. Now, when it comes to homeschool students, they have a different requirement. But let us move on to private scholarships. Private scholarships, yes, it's the fourth source of all financial aid. And yes, private scholarships are numerous, but I'm always asked, where do we go find private scholarships? Private scholarships start from your beginning. Your high school is going to have a list, and your counselors are going to have a list of all scholarships that are eligible at your institution for the school students going to your institution. Secondly, you as a student, where do you go if you work or if your parents work for a Fortune 500 company, or if students work for example, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Publix, those institutions, if you ask them, they provide scholarships for students that work at their institutions. Third, where do you as a student, where do you as a parent, where do you go for social organizations, religious organizations? Ask if there's scholarships available. Fourth, what college or university you're attending. Every college, every university, every technical center, if you go to the school's financial aid website, they're going to have a link for scholarships. Those are private donors giving money to students who are going to those institutions. Apply to those. They require a separate application. So just make sure that you submit those applications, because the more applications you utilize, the more scholarships you can receive. In the state of Florida, we lead the country in private scholarship dollars given. But also be very aware that if a scholarship organization starts asking for your social security number, banking information, routing information, that should raise red flags. Walk away from those. Make sure that you're going to legitimate sites, such as national websites, such as FastWeb, or your colleges, universities, and technical centers, or your counselors have national websites that they have deemed to be valid. Utilize those. So with that in mind, let's quickly review what you need to do. When it comes to federal financial aid, that application has opened up for the upcoming year. It opened up October 1st of 2024. When it comes to the state application, Florida financial aid application, it opens up every October 1st of the high school senior year. The last day is August 31st. Make sure that you have all the general requirements met. Make sure that you have your scholarship requirements met. When it comes to private scholarships, apply, apply, and apply. If you're a school, if you're going to an Ivy League school or the University of Miami, submit the CSS profile. And if there's any additional required institutional applications, whether you're chosen for verification, whether you're applying to a private scholarship, a state scholarship that requires that application, make sure that you complete it, because that ensures that once again you're evaluated for as much financial aid as you possibly can. Now, who could help you with this process? This is my direct contact information. My name once again is Pedro Hernandez. This is our website where we have every scholarship and grant given to the state of Florida. This is our Navigating Your Financial Future. This presentation is on there, but the counselors are going to make this presentation available. This is my direct email and my direct phone number. I am responsible for assisting all your counselors, but I'm also responsible to every student and parent in the state of Florida to answer any question or concern that you may have in regards to financial aid. But with tonight's session, I'm sure that I answered a great majority of your questions and concerns. But if I have not, we are now going to take those questions or concerns now. And it gives us plenty of time to address any question or concern that you feel that you can bring it up. Now, we do ask you that please don't divulge or share any personal information, and just make your question as generic as possible. Or if you have a private question or concern that does require you to divulge or provide that information, I could take you that on a one-on-one afterwards by calling my number or emailing that information to me. Any questions or concerns that we have, Lenoma, right off the bat?
So there was a couple of questions in regards to going back to the Bright Futures information. So they asked if you could please go back over that because they felt it was a little fast, and so they wanted to get a little bit more information about that.
Absolutely. So there are several ways to qualify. And once again, this is why we provide our website so you could actually go. And we have three Florida Bright Future student handbooks. The first one is about initial eligibility. How do you qualify? The second one is once you qualified, how does it work? How does the funding work? And the third one is once you're in school, how does your Bright Future Scholarship renew? So briefly, there are multiple ways to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, but the primary way is as follows. There are the course, first and foremost, those 5 requirements. The first one is classes. You need to have 4 credits in math, algebra 1 or higher, 4 credits in English, 3 credits in social science, 3 credits in biological science, and 2 consecutive world languages. Those are 16 core classes that you need to have in high school to qualify. Now, within those core classes, you need to have for the Florida Academic Scholarship, which is the second requirement, a 3.5 weighted GPA or higher. For the Florida Medallion, it is a 3.0 GPA. The third requirement is community service hours. Now, for the Florida Academic Scholar, you need to have 100 hours of either service hours or approved work hours or a combination of both, equaling 100 hours or more. For the Florida Medallion, that amount is 75 service hours, 100 approved paid work hours, or a combination of 100 hours or more between the two. Now, if you are a Goal C or Goal C vocational student, those are 30 hours of service hours or 100 work hours or a combination of 100 hours. Now, those are the 3 requirements: classes, GPA, community service. All of that is going to be included in the high school transcript. That's why if you need to provide your counselor that you have and done your community service hours or work hours, your counselors in every district and every counselor, they set the rules on how and what does qualify as service hours and approved work hours. But that's why you have to talk to your counselor, notify them that you have provided those, and they will provide those to us at the Department of Education on your high school transcript. The fourth requirement is test exams. That's an SAT, ACT, or CLT. Now, you guys live in Orlando or in the vicinity. Anytime you take an SAT, ACT, or CLT exam, make sure that you route it to either a state college, that's Valencia, Seminole, or UCF, and that's how we receive it in our test repository. Think of it as a big warehouse. Now, anytime you take either the SAT, ACT, or CLT multiple times, you're going to receive what's called the super score. And yes, we take that super score, but we need to have all of your tests that you have taken. So when you have your test results sent and you're looking at a super score, if you have just that test result sent, we're only going to receive the test result that you got for just that time that you took it. So that's why we need to have every one of those test scores to make sure that we super score those and give you the overall best composite from the individual subtest of those exams. And finally, in that Florida financial aid application, that's how those are the 5 requirements. Now, your counselors have access to all this information and they can tell you exactly where you are in terms of qualifying for the Bright Future Scholarship. But more importantly, they're going to tell you what you need and by when. Now, that is the primary way to qualify. Second way to qualify is if you are taking or are going to receive an ACE or an IB diploma. That qualifies you with your diploma and your service hours, qualifies you for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Now, those students who receive an ACE or an IB diploma, those students are going to be evaluated in late July, early August. Now, if they're qualifying just with an ACE or IB diploma. However, if you're still those students, but you're still taking the test and meeting all the other requirements, yes, right after graduation, your high school sends us a transcript and we'll do that final evaluation and start posting it to your account. So that's how financial aid works, and that's how Bright Futures works. Now, if you are in an ACE or an IB curriculum and do not receive the actual diploma, yes, you still have to meet all the other requirements to qualify for the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. Now, you could also qualify by being a National Hispanic Honors student and National Merit recipient as well. So just make sure that those are the three ways to qualify: traditional students, IB or ACE diploma students, or by earning those other higher certificates. Those are the ways to qualify. Now, how does it all work? When you have all your financial aid, and say your example, you're going to Florida State University, one of the greatest schools ever, being an alumni, of course. No, but any of our 12 state universities, any of our 28 state colleges, any of our private institutions that participate, what they do is think of them as opening an account. In that account, they're going to deposit every federal fund, every state fund, every institutional fund, every private scholarship. And normally on that fifth day of classes, they come in and they withdraw any liabilities such as your tuition and fees, books, anything you owe the school. And any money that's left over, they will transition to the student, either to their checking accounts, their student ID number, and that is set up when you go to orientation or when you get accepted. They ask you as a student, make sure that you follow these steps: how to enroll, how to set up your financial aid, how to check your financial aid. Because remember, students, now you're being treated like young adults. They will tell you, and now it is up to you and your responsibility to make sure and you fulfill all those requirements. Remain informed. And once again, if you have any question or concern, make sure that you're asking the questions, because the financial aid offices, they care, but they also have thousands and thousands of students that they have to answer to. They're not going to follow up with you time and time again, letting you know that you haven't done certain things, because nowadays your decisions or your lack of indecision can mean that certain financial aid might go to another person. A certain slot for admissions could go to somebody else if you're not following up in an appropriate manner. So that is why, once again, we in the financial aid office are there to assist you, but we are treating you like a young adult, and ultimately, we are there to answer any question or concern that you may have.
Thank you. I have another question. I don't know if it's more of a, I guess, a general question. It says, what is the earliest a person can apply for financial aid?
Right. So October 1st, we have had different changing things because the FAFSA just went through a redesign. But next year's class, that means the class of 25, 26, their opening date is October 1st. That is the first date that the Florida Financial Aid application opens up and the FAFSA opens up for next post-secondary year. So that is when the 25, 26 applications up for the 26, 27 post-secondary year. So that is the earliest that you could actually find. You can't do it any earlier. So October 1st for this year's juniors is next year's seniors. That's the opening date.
Okay, thank you. I have another question about um, foreign languages, or taking a foreign language. Is it only a requirement to take two? And does ASL, is that also included as a foreign language or language requirement?
Right. So there are for Florida Bright Futures, we do require 2 credits in a foreign language. So if they're taking French 1 and French 2, they qualify. But if they take French 2 and higher, that also automatically qualifies them to meet the level 2 or higher requirement. Now, if a student is a natural born speaker, or if they clap out of that, as long as it's on their high school transcript and it's sufficient to cover both credits, yes, that also meets the requirement. But once again, it has to be on the transcript, and that's why it's important to check with your high school counselor if the CLEP that they have or the classes that they're taking do qualify for Florida Bright Future Scholarship. But yes, American Sign Language 1 and 2 does qualify and meet and fulfill the requirement for 2 foreign languages.
Thank you. And another question we had is, when is a student considered an independent? When is the student, can a independent student apply, or when is the student considered an independent student?
Correct. So here's the thing. The U.S. Department of Education, through the FAFSA, they're going to determine for financial aid purposes a student's dependency, whether that student is dependent or independent. They're normally going to ask them 13 questions on the FAFSA, and they are as follows. Are you 24 years of age or older? Are you married? Or do you have children? Are you enrolling in graduate school? Are you a ward of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Are you in the active military service? If the student cannot answer yes to any of those questions, then the answer is no. The student is not an independent student, but then is a dependent student. And then by answering certain questions within the FAFSA application itself, they're going to determine who the parent or slash contributor is for FAFSA purposes. Now, those rules are U.S. Department of Education. They're not based on just the fact that you're 18 years of older. No, they have those specific criteria that identifies a student whether they're dependent or independent based on U.S. Department of Education criteria.
And I have another question. My child wants to go to school out of state. So do we complete the FAFSA?
That is correct. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA is for all schools across all 50 states. Now, the Florida financial aid application is also required and part of the requirements to meet the Florida Bright Future Scholarship because when it comes to the FAFSA, that's for any school, whether in state, out of state, public, private, for all schools. Now, the Florida financial aid application, by filling that out and meeting the Bright Futures requirements upon high school graduation, the students established either a 5 year period of eligibility or up to 120 credit hours towards their degree. Now, notice I said from high school graduation. That 120 credit hours is from graduation forward. If the student is dual enrolled or has any college credit, we don't count that. We count 120 credit hours funding from that point forward. Or finally, if the student receives their baccalaureate, their undergraduate degree in 105 credit hours or less, and it is within that 5 year period of eligibility, we will pay for their first semester of graduate school at the undergraduate rate. But this is very important for those students that are thinking about going out of state. And we every year we have thousands of students that they're going out of state and they don't think they're ever coming back. They leave and they go up to NYU, University of Michigan, and they realize that it snows 6 months out of the year. They want to come back to Florida. If they didn't fill out that simple 10-minute application, they have now lost out on their Florida Bright Future Scholarship because it is a requirement. So same thing happens. If the student takes a gap year, 2 gap years, they are still, remember, have either 5 years of eligibility after high school graduation or up to 120 credit hours within that 5 year period or until they get their first undergraduate degree within that 5 year period. That is the establishment, whichever ones comes first.
All right, and I think this may be my last question. Does the Bright Future Scholarship cover more than tuition? Does it cover books and supplies?
Correct. And that's a question that let me readdress that as well. When the Bright Future Scholarship is based on your status upon your qualifications upon high school. If you qualified for the Florida Academic Scholarship, you're going to receive 100% of tuition and fees at a state university or at a state college, the equivalent dollar amount at a private institution. If you qualify for the Florida Medallion, you're going to receive 75% of tuition and fees at a state university or 100% of tuition and fees at a state college. You are receiving 100%. However, once you get your AA or your AS and go into the upper level division, the Florida Medallion student is going to revert back to 75% of tuition and fees, whether they're still at a state college or a state university or the equivalent dollar amount at a private institution. Now, when, as I stated earlier, that information is based on how many credit hours the student is enrolled for, times however many, whether it's 100% or 75% of tuition and fees. That money goes into that account. And if the student, for example, has an additional scholarship or grant or additional money, or say the Florida prepay that pays off their tuition and fees, the student still has access to that equivalent dollar amount of the Bright Futures funding in that account to pay for additional expenses. But that dollar amount is going to be triggered by the level that they're at and the tuition and fees at that school, whether it's 75% or 100% of tuition and fees.
Okay, I had, I think two final questions. The first question was, how do they submit their work hours?
Correct. And that is, once again, your counselor at your high school is going to have a form and an approval process on how to submit and what qualifies for service hours and approved work hours at each individual institution.
And this was my last question. Can a junior apply for financial aid?
A junior in high school?
A
No.
junior in high school. Okay.
No. Remember, this is solely for their final year in high school. We normally attribute that to a high school senior. However, if a junior is graduating this year, they are not considered juniors, they're considered seniors. That is their last year of high school. If they're going to graduate, yes, they still need to meet all the requirements by those critical dates, such as a senior would. So, yes, if a junior is graduating this year, they're considered a senior for financial aid purposes.
All right. I think those are our final questions. We have a few more things that may be personal and that they may contact you at a later date, either emailing you or calling you at your extension or your phone there. So those are all of the general questions that we have currently.
Well, once again, I want to thank everyone. I hope that you are now all consider yourselves financial aid semi professionals, and that is my goal. If not, once again, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to answer any question or concern that you may have. Actually, if you call me right now, I'm still in the office, so I could take a couple of your calls specifically for those who had questions of a very personal nature. I'll be more than happy to answer the phone for the next 10 minutes. So you have 10 minutes to call me. And if my phone rings, nothing yet. All righty. Anything else? No. Oh, I do have one. Ask Nancy Mesa. I will answer it shortly.
Currently, we're just having everyone, they're just saying thank you. No one else is putting any questions in the chat. Just thanking you, an excellent presentation, and just all just saying thank you for the wonderful job you've done. So lots of hand claps, lots of thumbs up, and just everyone saying thank you.
It is my pleasure. And once again, we at the Florida Department of Education want to fund your education, want to make sure that you are evaluated and take advantage of every opportunity, every scholarship and grant to assist you fulfill your dreams, your aspiration, your goals to attend the school of your choice and the career of your choice. And for that, we want to help you and assist you. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.